Elon Musk and former President Trump broke the internet when they did a live interview on platform X. As of right now, the live interview has over 240 million views and 27 million listeners. In this video, I'm going to shorten the interview with the highlights, and afterwards I'll tell you Kamala's response and some other responses to the historic interview.
Well, I mean, maybe we could start off with, the assassination attempt, which was an incredible thing. And I have to say that, your actions after that assassination attempt were inspiring. You, instead of shying away from things, instead of ducking down, you were pumping your fist in the air and saying, fight, fight, fight. And I think that's, the president of the United States represents America. And I think that is America. That is strength under fire. And so that's a big part of the reason why I was excited to endorse you as the president of the United States for having another term here is that was just incredibly inspiring. But what was it like for you?
Not pleasant. I have to be honest.
Pleasant.
I said there was blood. I had more blood. I didn't know I had that much blood. The doctors later told me that the ear is a place that is a very bloody place if you're going to get hit. But in this case, it was probably the best alternative you could even think about because it went at the right angle, and it was a hard hit. It was very. I guess you would say surreal, but it wasn't surreal. I was telling somebody you have instances like this or like a lot less than this where you feel it's a surreal situation. And I never felt that way. I knew immediately that it was a bullet. I knew immediately that it was at the ear.
Yeah.
And because it hit very hard, but hit the ear. And I also heard people shout bullets, bullets, get down, because I moved down pretty nicely, pretty quickly. And we had bullets flying right over my head after I went down. So I'm glad I went down. The bigger miracle was that I was looking in the exact direction of the shooter. And so it hit me at an angle that was, far less destructive than any other angle. So that was the miracle. That was, for those people that don't believe in God, I think we got to all start thinking about that. You have to, I'm a believer. Now I'm more of a believer, I think. And a lot of people have said that to me. A lot of great people have said that to me, actually.
But he totally would have hit if you hadn't turned your head. So, there was it was a very near thing.
It was a miracle. If I hadn't turned my head, I would not be talking to you right now. As much as I like you,
exactly,
I would not.
Yeah,
I would not be talking.
You'd be talking to me from another realm, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. We'd be talking from a different place. But it was a very terrible experience. The Butler Hospital, they did such a great job.
Well, and speaking of the sort of slide that got you to turn that saved your life, really, was the illegal immigration slide. Maybe this,
right.
Maybe this is worth talking about that.
It was
that slide saved your life.
No, the illegal immigration saved my life. You're right, but it had to be at that exact angle.
That's a great one. saved by illegal immigration.
The incredible thing though, when you talk about the odds, you had to be exactly at that angle, but the incredible thing is that the chart, I used it less than 20% of the time. It was just a moment.
Yeah.
It's always on my left, never my right. And it's always at the end of the speech. So here we have it. It's on the right, not the left. It's at the beginning, not the end. And even the people that put it up, they were unprepared and they did a great job. They got it up immediately, fortunately. But I looked to the right and the bullet came whizzing by, hitting my ear. So it was amazing. But when you think of the odds of that, and that normally you wouldn't use it. Normally I wouldn't have the thing, and then it would have been a very different story. It's very much, I say, an act of God. It's a miracle that it happened, and I'm honored by it. I'm honored by it, and it's horrible what they're doing. And she's in charge of it because now she's trying to say she had nothing to do with it. And she's such a liar because She was called the border czar the first day, and it was on the headlines of every newspaper. She's the border czar, and she never even went there. She went to one location, which had nothing to do with where the problem is. You know, she went in and out, I
Right.
guess, because she was getting a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
had nothing to do where the problem
Yeah.
is. But she was
Well.
the
Well.
border czar, and people
Yeah. Yeah.
can't allow them to get away with their disinformation campaign. Now she's trying to say that she wasn't. She wasn't really involved, and the whole thing is horrible. She was totally in charge. She could have shut the border down without him. He didn't know what he was doing anyway, so he wouldn't have even known
Yeah.
what happened. You could shut the border down. He wouldn't
Yeah.
even know the difference. But the fact is that she was border czar. But if you don't have to call her
Yes.
that, the fact is you could just call her. She was in charge of the border, and the border was the worst
Right.
ever.
It's simply not working.
No,
It's,
it's
I mean,
horrible.
whether it's a question of intention or competence, either way, we don't have a secure border, and we have people streaming over like it looks like a World War Z zombie apocalypse at times. And sometimes you got to sort of wonder, like, is it real or not? So because you see things, you're like, is it real? So I went to the border at Eagle Pass, and I saw for myself in Texas, and I was like, okay, it's real. I'm like seeing this in real time. I actually posted the video like just live. I just flew there one day and just to see, hey, is this made up or real? And I'm just seeing people stream across the border, and I have to say, at least the people that I saw did not look friendly. So
These are
people
people.
can look at my video and say, hey,
Yeah.
these people look friendly. I don't look super friendly. So,
These are people that
um,
Elon would not be the same man if he had to walk across the street and look these people in the eye. These are rough people. These are really rough people coming across. And I know rough people. And these are people that we don't want in our country. No tax on tips. And all of a sudden she's making a speech and there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. You know, they had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents, and many of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies and all of this on tips. They have a policy. They had a policy that they were really going to go after you and were really harassing people horribly. And then all of a sudden, for politics, she says, she comes out with what I said, which I think is terrible. And I think it's also hitting them very hard. Don't forget, I beat Biden. He failed in the debate miserably. And, some people said, oh, gee, it's too bad. It's too bad he did so badly, or I did well in the debate. The first night they said, wow, one of the people at CNN said that was the greatest debate performance I've ever witnessed. And then 2 days later, they didn't talk about that. They just said he was bad. But that's okay. That's the way I get treated, and I don't mind that at all. What I can tell you is this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a
it's
different. Look,
yeah.
she hasn't done an
I mean,
interview since this
yeah.
whole scam started.
Well,
And say what you want. This was
yeah.
a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice
Yeah.
way or we can do it the
No.
hard way.
Yeah. No, I mean, they just took him out back behind the shed and basically shot him.
What they did
Biden.
with this guy,
So
and I'm no
yeah.
fan of his, and he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. And one of the reasons he was so bad, first of all, the Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and we'd have no inflation. And we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan mess, if you think of it.
Well,
And we wouldn't have had
yeah.
Afghanistan. But we think of it,
Well, yeah.
you take a few of those events away, and we have a different world. We would also have
No,
no
no, you're yeah.
inflation was caused by oil.
Yeah, no. I think you're making an excellent point here, which is that when other countries can, that are, are thinking about invading or doing bad things, when they're thinking about that, they're thinking about, okay, what's the American president going to do, and do they fear the American president, or is it someone they do not respect and do not fear? And I think they would. They rightfully be. I mean, look at that the footage of the assassination. They're like, okay, uh, President Trump is like, don't mess with me. I mean, that's like, but whereas I think people are not going to be, and they obviously have not been at all intimidated by Biden, and they certainly will not be intimidated by Kamala. And you have to really think of that in the context of global security.
Pathetic president gets in there. And the first thing he did, one of the early things he did is he shut down he shut down Keystone XL pipeline, which is our pipeline that would have employed 48,000 people, pipeline workers, shuts it down. That was, a massive job that Obama refused to allow.
Yeah.
I allowed it in my first week because it was jobs and it moved oil. And by the way, in a much more environmentally friendly way. It's underground. It's not a truck that catches on fire or a train that catches on fire. But think of it. He shut down the XL pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline. He
Yeah.
shuts that down and he approves the Russian pipeline,
Yeah. It doesn't make any
right?
sense. It's like, it's inconsistent.
Elon, I know every one
It's
of
a
them,
big
and I know
deal.
them well. I know
Yeah.
Putin. I know President Xi. I know Kim Jong Un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, "Oh, this is terrible." He said, "I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough. They're smart. They're vicious." And they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are
Yeah.
tough people at the top of their game. And when they see a Kamala or when they see Biden, Sleepy Joe, they can't even
Yeah.
believe it. They can't believe this happened. All the stuff that you're seeing now, all the horror that you look at Israel, they're all waiting for an attack from Iran. Iran would not be attacking, believe me. When I was there, and I say it with respect because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran, but they knew not to mess around. Iran was broke because I told China, if you buy from Iran oil, it's all about the oil. That's where the money is. But if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to do any business with the United States. And I meant it. And they said, we'll
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
They didn't buy oil. Other countries likewise.
Sure.
You want to buy, you're not doing business with the United States. And they were at a point where they had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for any of these instruments of terror. President Obama, just before entering, it's a sort of a ritual. And I sat down with him and we talked. It was supposed to be for a very short period of time. It turned out to be a long period of time. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. I had that problem worked out very quickly. It was nasty at the beginning with Rocket Man and, all the different things.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I
Those
got a
some those
call.
those some those were some epic tweets, by the way.
Yeah, they
Those
were,
were
no,
like
they were epic
actually.
everything. He said that he has a red button on his desk. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but my red button is much bigger and my red button works. And then I called him Little
Yeah.
Rocket Man of Little Rocket Man. Anyway, here's the bottom line. All of a sudden I got a call from him and they said they want to meet. They want to meet me. And we met,
Yeah.
as you remember, we met in Singapore. We met also in Vietnam. And I got along with them great. We were
Yeah.
in no danger. But
Yeah.
President Obama,
It's
President
because
Obama thought
they
we were going to
respond.
end up in a
Yeah.
war, a nuclear war with him. And let me tell you, he's
Yeah.
got a
It's not
lot of
true.
nuclear
Yeah,
stuff too. He's
exactly.
got plenty of nuclear.
It's
He can do plenty of damage.
it's
So,
yes. I mean, it's because people like Kim Jong Un, they respond to
yeah.
strength, not weakness.
Well,
And
he and I
and if you
he and I
project
had a good
strength,
relationship.
you're good.
Remember, I
Yeah.
remember I met him and we walked onto his land. Nobody ever walked onto his land before. I walked onto. I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
Let's
That
bring
was
up
cool.
Secret Service again. I wouldn't say they were thrilled when I did that. I walked onto his land, and it was an amazing period. But we were not in danger with him because of me. The stupid threats coming from a stupid face that he was using. I said, this guy's going to cause us a war. He's going to cause us. And let me tell you,
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
lead to World War III. That can lead to World War III. The Middle East can lead to. We have numerous places that could end up in a
Yeah.
World War III right now for no reason
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I think you're right. I think people underrate the risk of World War III, and it's just when you're looking at the risk of global thermonuclear warfare, it's game over for humanity, and it's something that people have, I think, after the end of the Cold War, people have become complacent about, but they actually have forgotten that there are currently a lot of nuclear missiles that have targeting parameters for the United States from other
100%.
countries.
And one of the things
And
we're going to do is
it's
we're going to
yeah.
build an Iron Dome over us. Israel has it. We're going to have the best Iron Dome in the world. We need it, and we're going to make it all in the United States. But we're going to have protection. The thing that they really is making them angry is what Kamala and Biden have allowed to happen to the economy. It's a disaster with inflation. The inflation, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you make. the inflation has eaten you alive. If you're a worker or if you're just a middle income person, you can't afford. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, people were saving a lot of money. Today, they're using
Yeah.
all their money and borrowing money just to live. It's a horrible thing
Right.
that's happening, and we'll end that
Well, I think a
quickly.
lot of yeah, a lot of people just don't understand where inflation comes from. Inflation comes from government overspending because the checks never bounce when it's written by the government. So if the government spends far more than it brings in, that increases the money supply, and if the money supply increases faster than the rate of goods and services,
That's right.
that's inflation. Um, so really, we need to have we need to reduce our government spending, and we need to re-examine. I think we need like a government efficiency commission to say like, hey, where are we spending money that's sensible? Where is it not
Right.
sensible? And we need to live within our means. We're currently adding, I think, $1 trillion to the deficit roughly
Right.
every 100 days.
That's right.
And the interest payments on the national debt have now exceed the defense budget.
Well, think of education. So we're ranked at the bottom of every list of the top 40. We're ranked number 40, number 38. Uh, Norway, Switzerland, Sweden, different countries are ranked good. Actually, China's pretty close to the top. They're a top 6 or 7, but we're ranked at the bottom, almost at the bottom, 38, 39, 40. In other words, horrible. And yet we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. So we spend more. And what I'm going to do, one of the first acts, and this is where I need an Elon Musk. I need somebody that has a lot of strength and courage and smarts. I want to close up Department of Education, move education back to the states, where
Yeah,
where states like Iowa, where states like Idaho, not every state will do great because states that basically aren't doing good now. You look at Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He's terrible. He does a terrible job. So he's not going to do great with education. But of the
yeah,
50, I would bet that 35 would do great, and 15 of
yeah,
them, or 20 of them will be as good as Norway. Norway is considered great. You can name them. I mean, they're so good. Some of
yeah.
these countries are so good. But if you go into some of these really well-run states, we have states that don't know what debt is. We have states that have low taxes, no debt, everybody working. They're really well run.
Sure.
And maybe they have certain advantages in terms of location, in terms of, the land or the sun and the water and the whole thing. There are a lot of advantages that some people have. But if you moved education back to the 50, you'll have some that won't do well, but they'll actually be forced to do better because it'll be a pretty bad situation.
Yeah,
But if you think about it,
yeah,
you'll have some
yeah,
of
yeah,
these states. I'll bet you'd have 30, 35 states. It'll be much better. And you know what it'll cost? Less than
yeah,
half what it is in Washington. And
yeah.
these people don't care
Well,
about the
yeah,
students in these, faraway states. And it'd
well,
be unbelievable.
yeah,
We've got to get the prices down. When I look at bacon costing 4 or 5 times more than it did a few years ago,
sure.
when you look at some of the food products in grocery stores, people go, they can't believe it. They used to be able to buy a whole cart, and today, a lot of people just don't have the money. They go in and they can't buy anything. They look at
Yeah,
it's sticker
I
shock.
think
They
it.
call it
Yeah,
sticker shock, right?
I think it really just comes, like I said, I think it just comes down to really, I guess, two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves living
Right.
standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason. But unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the 80s, but it's been 40 years since we had
That's right.
anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think there's an opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation.
Yeah.
And
Well, Elon,
if those two things, yeah, those are the big
yeah,
deal.
we set a record. We did more deregulation and more restrictions on all of the different businesses than any other president. Remember, I had the rule for every one we put in, you have to get rid of 10 or 12. And we did
Yeah.
radical cuts on all of that. And a lot of that's being put back by this administration. And we did radical cuts on things that weren't necessary. But we were all set. You know, we had the best economy ever maybe in the world. And then what happened is COVID came in and we had to focus on that and nobody knew what it was.
That I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving and the economy would collapse. So it's, I don't think it's right to sort of vilify the oil and gas industry. The world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other
Sure.
countries. And it would help with prosperity in the U.S. And at the same time, obviously, my view is like we do over time want to move to a sustainable energy economy because eventually you do run out of. I mean, you run out of oil and gas. It's not there it's not infinite. And there is some risk. I think the risk is not as high as a lot of people say it is with respect to global warming. But I think if you just keep increasing the parts per million in the atmosphere long enough, eventually it actually simply gets uncomfortable to breathe. People don't realize this. If you go past 1,000 parts per million of CO2, you start getting headaches and nausea. And so we're now in the sort of 400 range. We're adding, I think, about roughly 2 parts per million per year. So, I mean, it still gives us, so what it means is like, we still have quite a bit of time. But, so there's not like, we don't need to rush and we don't need to like, stop farmers from farming or, prevent people from having steaks or
Right.
basic stuff like
Right.
that. Like you can leave the farmers alone,
I agree.
in
How
my opinion.
crazy is that where
I mean,
you have farmers that are not allowed to farm anymore and have to get rid of their cattle and the whole world is
yeah,
a
that's
little
silly.
crazy, but it's largely taken its lead from us. I just say though, I've heard in terms of the fossil fuel, because even to create your electric car and create the electricity needed for the electric car. Fossil fuel is what really creates that at the generating plants. And, so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. I mean, someday you might be able to, but I do hear we have anywhere from 100 to 500 years left. Much of it hasn't even been found yet,
Yeah,
but there are tremendous, like Anwar. I got Anwar in Alaska approved. Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody tried. Nobody could do it. I got it approved. The first thing that Biden did was unimprove to get rid of it. He ended
yeah,
it. His secretary went in and she ended it. And what a disgrace. That's Anwar. That's bigger, or they think it could be bigger than Saudi Arabia in Alaska. And
absolutely.
she's going to be worse than him because she is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco, and then as Attorney General, she destroyed California. You talk about location, and we're talking about the sun and the water and all. There's nothing better than California. She has destroyed that. She was the original DA. She was the original in San Francisco. She was the original Attorney General in California. What she has done to California is, well, you know better than I do. You just left California for a lot of those reasons. And what she's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states now you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put up, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again. Our
Yeah.
country is becoming a very dangerous place.
No, I mean, obviously, what's happening sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far
Worse
left.
than Bernie
Um,
Sanders. She is considered more
yeah,
liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic. And if she's going to be our president, very quickly, you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of
yeah,
the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero. Now all of a sudden she's
yeah.
saying, no, I really want to see fracking. If they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, they won't vote for her. like the
Yeah,
Palestinians and Israel. She is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him. Both sides. That was a hard
yeah.
thing to do. Unification.
Yeah, well, maybe like I think part of what people in America want to, people in America want to feel excited and inspired about the future. They want to feel like the
It's
future is
true.
going to be better than the past, and that America is going to do things that are greater than we've done in the past,
That's
reach
right.
new heights that make you proud to be an American and excited about the future. Um,
They want the
and I
American
think
dream
this,
back. They want the American dream back. More important than anything else. It's like you don't have that today because the people they've been just sucked. They see incompetent people running our. The Biden thing is very interesting. People just found him to be incompetent, and when I debated him, I was like, "Is this for real?" It was
Yeah, it was just absurd. But I think there are like some grand projects that we could do. I mean, I think like we could build a base on the moon. We could send American astronauts to Mars. We
right.
could build high speed
Yep,
connections that are more advanced than anything else in the world between our cities, so people have fast transport. Um, that it's possible to solve traffic with tunnels.
that's right.
We already made great progress in Vegas doing that, and and just do things that are exciting and inspiring and make the future feel like it's better than the past.
Well, I saw what you
Like,
did in Vegas, and I'll tell you, it was amazing. I got to see. I took a big glimpse at it, and it's incredible. It's incredible, and you could do that all over. You could do that all over. It's once they start this precedent, because this can go on with the next one. I mean, this is a very bad precedent what they're doing in terms of going after their political opponent, and that's all it is. It's going after their political opponent, and
yeah,
and then you get a judge who's a strong Democrat, and I'm being nice when I say that, in many cases crooked as hell. But you get a judge and you go into an area where a Republican gets 3 or 4% of the vote, and you'll have a jury pool
yeah,
with people that hate Republicans or hate. It could also
sure,
be the other way though,
of course,
because it could start the other way in areas where they hate Democrats,
exactly,
and you get into a
yep,
Pandora's box. It's a very dangerous thing for this country, and a very dangerous thing even for the state. New York City is
yep,
losing. New York
absolutely,
City and state lose a lot of business over what they did to me, because these people say we don't want that to happen to us. That's no justice system. You have an unfair system of
yes.
justice, and it's costing New York State a tremendous amount of money. People are leaving and companies are leaving, and they won't come back.
Yeah, yeah. It's just gotta be done. We just can't have whether they're citizens or not citizens. We can't have, because they won't prosecute citizens either. Not just illegals. So that if it's you can't have violent repeat violent offenders that are not that don't get
That's
incarcerated,
right.
because they will obviously, by definition, continue to hurt people. And I think where part of this comes from is that there's and I do sort of consider myself liberal in some ways. I mean, it's just that you want to have empathy for
Right.
people. Obviously, you want to have empathy for people. I totally agree with that. You want to have empathy, but you also have to have empathy for the victims of the criminals. And if you just have empathy for the criminals, it's actually shallow empathy. It's not real. You're not thinking. You have one layer deep empathy. You got to say, like, what if you don't incarcerate this person? Who are they going to hurt? Who are they might kill someone. They might rape someone. If you don't incarcerate them, you have to have empathy for the victims. And there's a lack of empathy for the victims of the criminals, and too much empathy for the criminals. It doesn't make sense. That's why you want to have deep empathy for society as a whole, not shallow empathy for
That's right.
criminals.
And we have to give our police officers the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And we have to let them do their job. They can do a great job, but we have to let them do their job. And if we don't do that, it's going to all disappear. There's never been a society like this where you're allowed to do anything you want and nothing happens. And I'm talking about violent crime. And it's going to get more violent because these are really, really violent people.
Before this historic interview took place, Elon Musk received a massive warning from the EU. The warning went like this.
Dear Mr. Musk, I am writing to you in the context of recent events in the United Kingdom and in relation to the planned broadcast on your platform X of a live conversation between a US presidential candidate and yourself, which will also be accessible to users in the EU. I understand that you are currently doing a stress test of the platform. In this context, I am compelled to remind you of the due diligence obligations set out in the Digital Services Act, DSA, as outlined in my previous letter. As the individual entity ultimately controlling a platform with over 300 million users worldwide, of which 1/3 in the EU, that has been designated as very large online platform, you have the legal obligation to ensure X's compliance with EU law, and in particular, the DSA in the EU. This notably means ensuring, on one hand, that freedom of expression and of information, including media freedom and pluralism, are effectively protected, and on the other hand, that all proportionate and effective mitigation measures are put in place regarding the amplification of harmful content in connection with relevant events, including live streaming, which, if unaddressed, might increase the risk profile of X and generate detrimental effects on civic discourse and public security. This is important against the background of recent examples of public unrest brought about by the amplification of content that promotes hatred, disorder, incitement to violence, or certain instances of disinformation. It also implies 1. Informing EU judicial and administrative authorities without undue delay on the measures taken to address their orders against content considered illegal according to national and/or EU law. 2. Taking timely, diligent, non-arbitrary, and objective action upon receipt of notices by users considering certain content illegal. 3. Informing users concerning the measures taken upon receipt of the relevant notice. And 4. Publicly reporting about content moderation measures. In this respect, I note that the DSA obligations apply without exceptions or discrimination to the moderation of the whole user community and content of X, including yourself as a user with over 190 million followers, which is accessible to EU users and should be fulfilled in line with the risk-based approach of the DSA, which requires greater due diligence in case of a foreseeable increase of the risk profile. As you know, formal proceedings are already ongoing against X under the DSA, notably in areas linked to the dissemination of illegal content and the effectiveness of the measures taken to combat disinformation. As the relevant content is accessible to EU users and being amplified also in our jurisdiction, we cannot exclude potential spillovers in the EU. Therefore, we are monitoring the potential risks in the EU associated with the dissemination of content that may incite violence, hate, and racism in conjunction with major political or societal events around the world, including debates and interviews in the context of elections. Let me clarify that any negative effect of illegal content on X in the EU, which could be attributed to the ineffectiveness of the way in which X applies the relevant provisions of the DSA, may be relevant in the context of the ongoing proceedings and of the overall assessment of X's compliance with EU law. This is in line with what has already been done in the recent past, for example, in relation to the repercussions and amplification of terrorist content or content that incites violence, hate, and racism in the EU, such as in the context of the recent riots in the United Kingdom. I therefore use you to promptly ensure the effectiveness of your system and to report measures taken to my team. My services and I will be extremely vigilant to any evidence that points to breaches of the DSA and will not hesitate to make full use of our toolbox, including by adopting interim measures, should it be warranted, to protect EU citizens from serious harm. Yours sincerely, Thierry Breton.
Kamala Harris freaked out about the historic interview and posted this.
Right now, Elon Musk is interviewing Donald Trump live on Twitter. We're not calling it X. It's not enough that Musk has pledged to donate millions of dollars to help re-elect Trump. He's using his Purchase platform, one of the largest social media sites in the world, to spread Trump's unhinged and hateful agenda to millions of users. If that's all you need to hear, chip in $25 now to help Kamala and Tim have the resources to respond to their lies. Otherwise, let us remind you why this is a big deal. The richest person in the world is a lackey for Team MAGA. Musk already ruined Twitter by allowing hate speech and disinformation to flood the platform. Now, Musk is using his vast fortune and broad reach to try to control our democracy. Donald Trump's extremism and dangerous Project 2025 agenda is a feature, not a glitch, of his campaign, which was on full display for those unlucky enough to listen in tonight during whatever that was on X.com. Trump's entire campaign is in service of people like Elon Musk and himself, obsessed rich guys who will sell out the middle class and who cannot run a live stream in the year 2024.
For the record, Elon Musk did invite Kamala Harris for an interview on X, and she declined to do an interview. Right now, it seems like the Democrats' strategy is to hide Kamala Harris from the public as long as possible.